I think this is a particular problem on the left in that they can reiterate the policies of the politicians on the right, but they can't conceptualize of why they would believe this. At least in this election, obviously identifying more with the Conservatives, we can articulate to you what the Liberal platform is and what they're trying to achieve with those goals. You want a population that's very heavily taxed and regulated so they can maintain a market in the type of economic system that they want to have. That's the system that they want to have, and these are the way that they can achieve those aims.
Welcome back to the Critical Compass. I'm James. This is Mike. And today we're going to dive in and talk about why Edmonton's mayor is going on a leave of absence and why our politicians seem to just step away from their duties randomly. I don't understand. Mike, you tell me what's going on here.
Well, I'm sure glad you passed it off to me because I also don't understand. But what I do know is that our mayor is taking a leave of absence so that he can run in his historical riding that he was. If maybe many of our listeners might know that he was once Justin Trudeau's transport minister. I think he may have had another ministerial role as well, but Amarjeet Sohi, he certainly was an MP for a while. And yeah, so this article is from a few weeks ago, but we wanted to talk about it now with kind of middle of the road through the election cycle here. It's just such a crazy story. I mean, I'll just read the first few lines. Edmonton City Council granted Mayor Amarjeet Sohi's request Monday afternoon for an unpaid leave of absence while he runs for the Liberals in the federal election. Sohi announced on Sunday he's running in Edmonton Southeast, a new riding that covers part of the area he used to represent as the MP for Edmonton Mill Woods. Sohi's leave will be in effect until the day the official results of the election are released. Canadians go to the polls on April 28th. And this is just a great little quote here, because I think I would probably describe it the opposite way, but quote, I think this is being respectful of the taxpayer dollar and that the leave without pay is part of the motion, said Councillor Joanne Wright during Monday's special council meeting. James, that's really an interesting choice of words because, I would say, rather than being respectful of the taxpayer dollar, I think that's just that's the absolute bare minimum. The notion that it would even be acceptable in any circumstance to pay Amarjeet Sohi simultaneously to be the mayor, that he isn't fulfilling his duties while he's running for a completely different level of government seat. I mean, the notion is ridiculous, but I think the whole thing is ridiculous because this is a situation where an opportunity has presented itself, obviously, that Sohi views to be more either lucrative or, a higher, maybe he feels like he's not getting his dues, as just a lowly mayor when he was once in the federal government. I don't know what he's thinking, but nothing about this feels respectful to me. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it feels like he's running away from the city. Because obviously, if his heart was in making Edmonton better and fulfilling his duties as the mayor, he would stick it out the whole way through. Obviously, if somebody's truly passionate and they're like, I'm here for a term, here's what I have, here's what I'm implementing. Let it be, in his case, it's more bike lanes, it's some of these eco initiatives like the electric buses that don't work in the winter. If your heart is truly in it, wouldn't you stick through to the end? So that's showing a lack of commitment. And that's almost, you wouldn't do this in any other workplace.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say okay, well, I'm doing great here as an employee, but okay, I'm going to just hold with me for 2 weeks. I'm going to apply for another job. If I don't get it, I'll see you back. And then yeah. I hope you welcome me back with open arms.
But don't worry, I'm not expecting to be paid during these 2 weeks. No shit, because you're not working. Holy Christ. This next part is just brilliant. I just love it. Sohi has said that he will come back to the mayor's chair and serve the rest of his term if he loses the federal race, but he will not run for re-election municipality in the fall. Yeah, well, I would hope not. I would hope that he wouldn't even return. But anyway, in the meantime, city councilors will take turns filling in as deputy mayor. I'm not going to pronounce it, but Karen Principe has the position until April 21st, and Ann Stevenson takes over after that. If Sohi wins the federal seat, he will resign as mayor, and city council will discuss filling his role, potentially with an interim mayor or continuing with the deputy rotation. So not only is this like, throwing a wrench in for the last 2 weeks and for the next 2 weeks, now potentially we could just not have a mayor. We could have a rotating musical chairs of deputies until the municipal elections in the fall. Like, talk about disrespect, man. Like, that's as residents of the city. Like, I just, it's oh man, I'm heated. I'm hot.
It is funny. If your job can be so easily covered, how important was that job in the first place?
Yeah. And I love the he'll return. He'll just return if he loses the federal election. Okay. Well, I'm sure like his headspace will be right, and he'll be like, he'll be reinvigorated and ready to go, and he won't just be there just filling a chair and warming a seat up until, for the next 4 or 5 months. Like,
yeah, it's I think it speaks to also the fact that he's not planning on running again. Reflects that, well, he's not leaving Edmonton in a good place. Well, and I guess the examples I can point to is that they spent a huge amount of money on projects that not everybody really agrees with. Let it be painting our sidewalks, all kinds of colors, these virtue signaling type of issues where we still have roads that have potholes, and we have areas that are being converted into more and more bike lanes where it's frozen half the year. We have electric buses, and those don't work. So we have money sinks that maybe someone could argue that we're not getting our money's value out of it. And there's some base level, let it be sewage, just infrastructure, are we providing good services to the property, like the homeowners that pay the property taxes that go into the city coffers? And the fact that they had to ask for more money and had to raise property taxes, saying that we ran out of money, that's not demonstrating good fiscal responsibility. And I think we see this more on the left, is they are great at spending other people's money, and they've lost the perspective of, well, it's just $1 million here, it's just $1 million there. And really the sense of value gets watered down, and then nothing's really accounted for. And I think you can expect that going into the federal, the federal election as well. You look at these track records, and so much money is wasted. And it blows my mind that it's not really like nobody's being called out for mischief, for misallocating millions and billions of dollars. Yet we have prosecution of protesters. So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a general level of clown show that we're just expected to accept. And I mean, I don't think we're being precious about this. Like, I don't think it's too much to ask that, if you're in a position as a mayor of a city, that you're just not allowed to run for another level of government, a completely different level of government concurrently while your term is being served as mayor. Like, there are people who voted for him as mayor that, I would assume want to see him fulfill his term as mayor. Like, that's, if you were a Sohi voter, how are you looking at this? Like, oh, I guess I got, whatever, 80% of my votes worth, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, I don't know, but anyway, that's the state that we're in. So it's going to be a gamble regardless, because that's the, I believe his competitor is, his name is, slipping now from me, but he's beaten Sohi the last couple times that they've run together, I think. Can you think of his name? Let me look it
It's not my.
Tim Uppel. He's actually I believe may even be the deputy, one of the two like deputy PMs or something.
Did we meet him at all?
I think we did.
Remember
I think we did
was
very
he at the
briefly.
AGM?
I believe he was, and he was he actually introduced he introduced some speakers at the rally. Yeah, he is deputy leader of the opposition, serving with Melissa Lantsman. So yeah, he's very high up in the party. So yeah, that'll be a tough race, but he's beaten Sohi before, so be curious to see how that riding goes. I'm going to be curious to see, maybe this is a good segue into the general election talk, because today is the first official debate. It was the French language debate. I saw some clips. I wasn't going to watch the whole thing. I'll watch the highlights, or the lowlights as it is. But I have read the general consensus. Maybe we're in a bit of a bubble, but the general consensus seems to be that Poilievre did very well. People are commenting that he sounded and he seemed very prime ministerial. Carney is well known to not have strong French, and I believe that that may have affected him. The general comments that I've been reading is that his people are having a hard time understanding him. I don't think his vocabulary is necessarily that strong. So maybe that would, maybe he's not being very precise in French. James, I'm curious what you think, because I've had this discussion before with people. We may have even talked about it briefly on here, but I don't know that. I mean, everyone knows the polls are fake and gay and they're not real, but the idea that the Liberals are just going to walk through Quebec like they always do, I don't really buy that. Like, I don't think that the Quebecois are too thrilled on handing their vote to a guy who very obviously doesn't really have much time or interest in learning how to properly communicate to them. He's had, he's worked in Europe before. I mean, he worked in England. He's lived, all over Europe, and he's, I'm sure, had lots of business dealings in France. He's markets himself as a pretty worldly guy. Apparently he doesn't have the interest though to, woo voters in a huge liberal stronghold traditionally. And I have a hard time that they're going to vote for him when you have, maybe this is selling them short a little bit, but the guy, Pierre Poilievre, that's about as French as it gets. His French is very strong. He, has a long track record of being, pretty well liked in Quebec. So yeah, I just don't think that Quebec is going to be as red as people think it is. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like in Quebec they vote for their province more than they vote for Canada. And I feel like that's been demonstrated in the past. And in this case, Carney doesn't seem to be, other than, he doesn't seem to be favoring Quebec other than maybe protecting equalization. If they were going to vote on something, if they were worried that equalization would be maybe like watered down or shifted under the Conservatives. I don't know the rhetoric that's happening in Quebec right now, but I could see that being maybe one of the deciding factors.
Okay. Yeah. By that.
But the other thing about this debate is I don't know if it matters as much of the French vote, but I feel like the choices of translators is a little sus.
I heard about that. Yeah, that they
give the most confident sounding voice to the weakest French speaker. So Carney gets the strongest translator. Give the effeminate, less confident sounding voice to Poilievre. Yeah.
I wonder if they, though, like, just to play devil's advocate here, I wonder if Carney needed the strongest translator, like a guy.
Yeah, like maybe he's the only person who can fully decode.
Yeah,
his pseudo French.
He'll fill in the gaps. But which again, though, to unplay devil's advocate, that's not really right, is it? Because if he requires this much assistance, then that's just further proves my original point.
Well, what I'm getting to is the bulk of the voters being English speaking. If they
Yeah.
see highlights from the French debate,
They'll
they
hear it in
will
the conference.
see.
Yeah.
They will hear sound bites that sound more confident and sound
Yeah.
more articulate than they actually are.
Yeah.
So it for the majority of the voters, this French debate's currently not going to hurt them as much as it would if everybody could fully comprehend how much nonsense he's speaking in French.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, there's shenanigans all over the place. There was a lot of comments actually. I was reading that it felt like the speed with which Carney was answering questions, it felt like he may have been aware of what the questions were. I mean, I know that's a very like spicy allegation, but I mean, wouldn't be the first time that one candidate was given an advantage over another in a debate. So who knows? He's the only candidate actively, maybe other than Jagmeet, who is like championing the CBC. So I don't know.
Well,
If
you have to remember, Carney is an outsider. He's an outsider in no way. He's new. He's an outsider, never in politics, unless you count him advising the Liberals for multiple years.
For 4 years, and then for being,
but he's an outsider.
Finance minister in 2 different governments, going back to 2008, I think.
He managed to get his signature on the money by.
Did he? Oh, good for him.
Well, being at the Bank of Canada,
being the governor. Yeah. Being
the
wow.
The person who gets to press the print money button, and then would declare.
He was happy to do that. Hey,
yeah, it's like I don't know where this inflation's coming from. They act so surprised. Like, well, we predicted inflation would be less. It's like, well, you obviously don't understand some basic principles of.
I predicted I'd be an all-star NHL player, but here we are.
Yeah, some things just don't work out the way you intend. So
I guess not.
This is where this election's. It's funny to me. Well, it seems strange,
funny,
but
or funny.
Yes, it's both hilarious and it's both a mind fuck in a way. But I also anytime I seem maybe a little bit frustrated, I take a step back and I realize people are living in different worlds. And the world that we're living in, our information landscape, we've put a lot of effort to step outside and to seek new information, to stress test our ideas, and we've changed our consensus over time. Our ideas have shifted. And I don't think people have gone through the same process. Like a good chunk of people have not stress tested their ideas. Yeah. They get emotional when somebody disagrees. And we've seen this with friends and family. And you see this online with people who just get upset when you say the wrong words. You have the wrong opinion. You're not supposed to believe that. You're a bad person. So there's a lot of incentive to kind of stick within your own circle. And as soon as we step outside of the circle, I think a lot of conservatives forget how it feels to be inside one bubble because we're outside of that bubble. And if a lot of our interactions are with people who also believe the same things, let it be on mandates or how COVID went, or with kind of the financial side of where Canada's going, or kind of where we need to go with governance and immigration and all these other policies, we're in a totally different bubble. So I'm wondering, well, not wondering, like I know there won't be a bridge to gap that divide in this election, but I'm wondering how strong is that bubble, and what is the minimum that people need to vote on? Is it maybe it's a simple misconception? Could it be Pierre's going to take away abortion rights. That could be, and that's not true.
Mhm.
And that's enough of a
Explicitly,
that's enough of a misconception that a uninformed, unengaged left-leaning voter might even vote on that. So I guess
yeah. Well, we were
what's
talking
the path
about
forward? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your train of thought there. We were talking before we hit record here about how that little clip that came out this week about, or maybe late last week, of Polyev talking about his nonverbal daughter, and how that was kind of a nice little like humanizing kind of moment, to maybe for somebody who, who views Polyev as a Trump light or something like this, like, obviously couldn't be farther from the truth, but a lot of conservatives in Canada wish he was like a Trump light, but these unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your opinion, not even close. But to see, a little humanizing type of segment about this, where he's talking about his little daughter, who's like, obviously, I think nonverbal probably means like she's somewhere on the autism spectrum, probably, and she was just a small comment on like how they communicate. They find different ways to communicate, and like how nice it is when she like, because she really wears her emotions on her sleeve, because she can't really, she experiences the extremes of emotions, and so when she shows, caring and love, that's like it means so much more, because it's so, you can tell that she really means it, kind of thing. I think that was the gist of the little comment, but like, I have a hard time believing that, even the most hardened like Polyev, liberal Polyev hater could see that and be like, maybe he's not so bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when you see somebody you hate, and, or like a politician or an actor or somebody you don't like, and like you see them interacting with their dog or something, or their kids, and you're like, yeah, maybe he's all right. You know what I mean? Like one of those little breaks the fourth wall kind of things.
Is that enough to undo months or years of demonization?
I doubt it.
Because here's the thing: you can find clips of Trump being like him interacting with his grandchildren.
Yes,
the softness and the grace, and you can see, like, you could see his heart come out, and he's so happy to see them, and he's interacting, and the way he interacts with children. Those are all green flags of like, if you're comparing between different political figures, there's examples of people who are creepy around children.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple too many sniffs.
Yeah. Well, sniffing Sleepy Joe. Yeah. Right. I was just gonna say, like, it's a perfect example, because it's like you look at how the media tried to portray Joe Biden and his family for the last 4 years, for the last, like, even going back into the late 2000s, or rather, late 2000s, early 2010s as the vice president, and like his family is a disaster. Like, they're just awful people, and like, what a mess. And then you look at Trump, and Trump's supposed to be this like irredeemable like scourge on the earth, and like his kids love him. They're all like high powered, professionals. They all work with him in some capacity. The grandchildren love him. Like, his family unit is like very intact. So it's like, oh, how do you square these two things, eh?
Yeah. And if the fundamental truth is shown through somebody's character, you shouldn't need media to cover for, like, it should be, let's say if somebody has a lack of character, truly, like, you should just be able to take a clip, let it run its full context, and a 5-minute clip should show you everything you need to know. And when there's the same thing happens with Polyev, you get these little snippets, and I don't think people really engage with more than that. I'm always curious, like, what's the full context around this? And we run into this problem. I think we all are a little bit guilty of. We'll see a clip, it says something, and we resonate with whatever that small little snippet is.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see the full picture around it. And we have to do this even when it agrees with us. If it kind of, you're like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like, it confirms my gut feeling on that. Like, okay, well, let's always just step out. Let's get into the habit of watching the full thing, seeing what the context or not jumping to conclusions, no matter how good or bad
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. Well, and also what guys like us and, the circles that we run in now tend to forget too is there's not a lot of people out there sitting there, spending their evenings watching, hour long or even more, documentaries or like series of related YouTube videos on political theory and the history of, such and such an issue in this country, or philosophical, discussions about policy. Like, not a lot of people do that. We are twisted and just like messed in the head, and we love this kind of stuff, and that's why we in turn like to talk about it and sort of, bounce ideas back and forth with each other. And so we can kind of, this isn't to toot our own horns here, but this is just sort of how we're wired. Like, both of us have our flaws and our disinterest in tons of things. We just happen to be interested in and good at talking about this kind of stuff. But we are not representative of the average voter. Like, you look at what, I don't know if you've seen those clips of guys like who go to I can't think of the guy's name, but he's been going to carny rallies and like interviewing, the average carny attendant, and like invariably it's like a 60-year-old white woman or whatever, right? And it's like, well, what are you concerned about in this election? Well, we want to stand up to Trump. And it's like, oh, for Christ's sake, like, okay, that's the extent of what you believe this election is about? Like, because both of the two guys talk, say the same rhetoric there. Is there anything, does your analysis go any deeper than this? And the answer is no. The analysis does not go deeper than that.
Yeah, these people, I feel like they're engaged. They're obviously going to rally, so they're engaged in one way. But are the ideas, have they really engaged with the ideas?
Yeah.
And maybe some of them have in university, but that's also not, is that fully stress testing all these ideas? You look at even, I was going to say, as an example of the type of content I will gladly relax to make some food or get a workout in. I've like listening to the full breakdown of how we shifted into fiat currency, just as a nice little topic to relax to. Like,
there's some nice light listening. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people would be like, some people would never dream to just listen to, like, they would not be able to follow. No. Or they would find it too boring, or like, why does this matter?
Yeah.
But why it matters is these things underpin pretty much everything in society. And if we're voting on specific people to implement policies, what underlies these policies?
Yeah.
So we've got to take the emotion out of it. And same thing with even voting for, I feel like the conservatives, people voting for conservatives right now, you still run into that issue where if you're voting out of hate, it's like, well, if your choice is this other side, well, look at what they did to us. I hate them, so I'm voting for the conservatives to spite them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good reason.
Yeah. It's a backwards way of approaching it. You shouldn't be voting against things. You should be voting for, right?
Same thing. But if that's the whole liberal strategy right now, is demonize Polyev as Trump.
Yeah.
And then prop up Carney as, well, we are fighting against Trump, and by Polyev by extension. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a I'm sure many people have said this in many ways, but there's a kind of an old adage where it says, like, you can't really claim to understand your opponent's viewpoint unless you can iterate it back to them in a way that they agree with, in the way that they've agreed that you've laid out what their position is. You know what I mean? I would go one step further, especially in respect to politics, and I would say I would say that you can't really understand your opponent's political views unless you can iterate it back to them in a way that they understand and in a way that you understand the goals that they're trying to achieve. Because I think that most conservatives or liberals could recite to you, some of the major talking points of the opponent's platform, for example. But I don't think, and I think this is of course I'm going to say this, but I'll justify it. I think this is a particular problem on the left in that they can reiterate the policies of the politicians on the right, but they can't conceptualize of why they would believe this. It doesn't work the other way because, as people who, broadly identify as, more so with conservatives, I think we're both probably more a little bit, call us libertarians or whatever, but at least in this election, obviously identifying more with the conservatives, we can articulate to you what the liberal platform is and what they're trying to achieve with those goals. And even if you say it's, uncharitable, I don't even think they would deny it. You want a population that's very heavily taxed and regulated so they can maintain a market in the type of economic system that they want to have. That's the system that they want to have, and these are the way that they can achieve those aims. And maybe for a very tiny subset of the population, that's an appealing system, but I would say for far more, it's not. On the other hand, I don't know of many strong liberal voters who could articulate. Let me give you an example, a clearer example, then I'll stop talking for a second. Do you remember when Trudeau was pushing that school lunch program? We've talked about this before briefly, I think. He was pushing the school lunch program and was using the conservatives' opposition to it as a point of argument of oh, the conservatives don't want your children to have food or something. And it's well, obviously not. That's obviously no one disagrees with the premise that children should have healthy lunches and good food. No one is on the other side of that argument. The argument is that should it be the government that's providing that food, or should a system of governance be put in place that allows families to have the type of disposable income that allows them to provide their children with the necessary and healthful food to get their lunches? That's the actual argument. The argument is not this straw man that they've constructed of the conservatives just don't, all that money that would have gone to that program, they want to give to their wealthy bankers or whatever. And it's okay, listen, bud, your party leader is a wealthy banker. So this is my point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be the one person to say, with the childhood obesity rates, we need less food for children.
Less food in schools. James from the Critical Compass, you heard it here first.
But that's the perfect example of some of these. It's a legislation. It's not ultimately the to actually set it in motion. It's not designed to be effective because you can't feed everybody. It's not a top-down, unless they have the level of control in every school. It's the amount of improvement that they can get is minimal. Same thing happens with the dental program, or the childcare CCB, childcare benefit. These things sound great when you're delivering a speech. Then you look into the details and they have very strict stipulations. They have very strict income cutoffs, and they're actually not helping a lot of people, but to a voter, it sounds like a good thing.
Yeah.
And then you see cases of people trying to access the childcare benefit, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not eligible for it yet, or I have to submit a thing, and then there's some paperwork, and then it gets denied. So the opposition to that. The case is, sorry, again, please finish your thought, but often the cases with these types of things, exactly like what you're saying, the incentive is to actually make less money so that you can qualify for these programs. The incentive is never on the more, progressive, liberal side. The incentive is to never earn more and achieve more. It's always, if you're earning less and achieving less, we'll give you more. So it's a perverse, it's an inverted incentive. Yeah, we might have to do an episode where we actually pull up the numbers. There's some good data on this right now, even showing that the money disproportionately goes to new Canadians or new temporary residents and people who are, well, they're coming to Canada and they're struggling. So again, you are kind of just buying voters at this point.
Yeah.
This is a population that is expanding, and these amounts of benefits, I can see where it comes from, because you're saying like, well, these people need help. They're not doing as well as another group. That makes sense. When you're coming from the left, you have compassion for all. This wide circle of compassion. We've seen these heat maps of where people broadly direct their empathy towards wider and wider circles outside of their kind of family unit. And what happens is that as this empathy gets applied to these groups, well, you can't ever oppose any of these things because you are immoral if you do. Only a evil conservative would try to deny benefits to people who need it the most, rather than thinking about, well, what's the economic background? Like, what's the landscape that is informing these decisions? So yeah, that is the study.
The liberal, this is the image, the oh man, I can't find the screen. Okay, sorry. Yeah, the conservative versus liberal heat map of empathy. As the circles get larger, the relational distance from you gets farther.
Yeah,
and
saying that
the argument is that
focus more on family and like close-knit circles.
Yeah. And so the argument was that I've read two conflicting things. There are two conflicting ways it says that the study was worded, is that that each ring was not inclusive of the other. So like the attention that you would give to one in the inner circle was taken away from all others. And then there's another way that said that the study was worded that outside rings were inclusive of inner rings, and that's why the liberals heat mapped out here. But that's actually like just as stupid. That's actually like just as bad, because it's not like, in what world do you think you can give equal consideration to amoebas as you can your literal family members, or like potential all living things in the, like, alien life forms in the year? Like what you think you can, like, your empathy can extend that far? Like regardless of what the actual wording of the question is, it's all stupid. It's all bad.
The people may disagree about exactly what this study proves or not, but the reason it's turned into a meme and it's been spread around is because it reflects a fundamental known truth that we all agree on this. I think liberals will be the first ones to tell them they have empathy for everybody. Until you disagree with them, then their empathy runs a little dry instantly.
Yeah, they want diversity in all things except for opinion.
Yeah, they will call you a lot of bad words instantly when you disagree. So in this case, in our political sphere or our political climate, these types of things it preys on the emotions. And there, I wish I could find, let's see if I can.
Why don't you tell me? I'll look it up while you're talking.
I think I have a picture saved.
Okay.
It's on my phone. All right. I think there's another layer to it. So we've had masculinity demonized in a way.
Yeah.
And I feel like, in a sense, we see the people rejecting kind of the soft-spoken feminization of men are shifting towards the right.
Yeah,
generally,
like the Andrew Tate factor kind of thing.
No, yeah, it doesn't even need to be. That's kind of an overcorrection. We could unpack that in its own. Like that's it's maybe that's the manifestation of, to the degree that this this kind of issue has
Yeah.
metastasized into. But I want to read this one quote, and this is one of these like unnamed red text.
Oh, yeah.
So it's saying, people who can't defend themselves physically, women and low T men, parse information through a consensus filter as a safety mechanism. They literally do not ask, is this true? They ask, will others be okay with me thinking this is true? This makes them very malleable to brute force manufactured consensus. If every screen they look at says the same thing, they will adopt that position because in their brain it interprets it as everybody in the tribe believing it. Only high T alpha males, which is, we can argue about the term alpha male or not, but, and neurotypical people, like the autistics out there, are actually free to parse new information with an objective, is this true filter. This is why a republic of high status males is best for decision making. Democratic, but a democracy for only those who are free to think. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen that one before, and I really liked it. I regardless, yeah, like you say, you can pick apart some of the language there, but yeah, I think it's the insight there is very broadly true. I mean, we saw this during COVID. I mean, where people's entire like people were literally willing to throw their fellow citizens in prison camps for not taking the thing that the TV said that they should do, because they were, the vaccine is 100% effective, but if they don't have it, and if your friend doesn't have it and you do, then you could still get sick. So, like, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be what they're being told is right. And yeah, we invariably saw this very phenomenon where you had certain people of, what they call like the bro podcast scene or whatever. Like, you see, I can't remember the guy's name. There was a Canadian guy who, he lives overseas now. He's like a big, like, kind of bodybuilder guy who got pretty well known for like making kind of anti-lockdown videos and stuff.
Chris Guy,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
fully tatted guy.
Yeah.
He did a bunch of videos where he was going through airports and saying, well, I don't need to go to quarantine camp. And he really pushed.
Yeah. He really pushed back on that. And that is something that like only at least somebody who views himself as a high status person would do, but obviously only somebody with the type of, self-assurance to kind of pull that thing off. Right. So yeah, I mean, we saw it. I mean, I know some people will look at that and say that it's sexist and whatever. And it's like, well, it isn't sexist because it's, there are plenty of women out there. There are plenty of conservative women out there who are very vocal on these issues and don't like follow. And I think there's a certain, there's kind of like a meme of the like conservative Christian, like trad wife girl or whatever, like, but I think a lot of that is like, a lot of those things are fairly protective against social contagions, because those types of women are they've found meaning outside of, whatever the most popular thing in a social circle is. They have their family and their faith and whatever, so yeah, there are certainly, but those would be the type of women who would also agree that society needs to be led by, strong, independent, free-thinking men. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of a double, it's sort of a, I can't think of the term. It's ironic in a way, but it's like, yeah, I don't think very much of that is controversial.
Well, then that kind of describes how you kind of pointed to how faith and family are some of these fundamental pillars, and with a strong family unit, you are less susceptible to that social contagion, because you're like, well, this is what I need for my family. Here are our principles, and you put trust in whatever structure you have in that family. And I think you run into issues where, well, where do you defer your trust and where do you defer your authority to? And there's one example. It was somebody saying like, well, okay, well, feminism has got us to a place where a woman's taught to go to a job and listen to a male boss and take orders and do, yes, sir. Yep, I'll do that, and take orders from that. We'll listen to the government.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you, big government, for telling me how to live my life.
Yeah.
And then go home and think that following the direction or listening to her husband is oppressive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what? So the one person who has vowed in his heart to do everything he can to love and cherish and help her grow and raise a family, the person who stood up in front of friends and family, like 100 people, and said their vows, somehow should be disregarded because that's oppression.
That's oppression. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a a dirty trick that was played on women, right? You know, it's like, the notion that, well, I mean, like, and so the other half of that, the faith part is like, you know, it's not a coincidence that every authoritarian government that's ever existed, you know, I mean, we can point to the ones in the, 20th century anyway, that as soon as they arise to power, they do everything they can to eliminate the churches, any churches. It doesn't matter which, just anything that would pull from a person's willingness to submit to the authority of the state. If they have a higher power, it becomes much more difficult to get them to commit atrocities on behalf of the state, right?
Yeah, the religion's always it's incompatible with the state because the state is functioning as a religion at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you must have faith in the experts. You must have faith in the structure. You may have, like, if you do not have
science.
Yeah. If you do not have faith in your institutions, what do you have? And I remember even during COVID, when I was pointing some things out on the efficacy of lockdowns and how it's never really been done before, and it's outside of the pandemic plan that we had and all the recommendations that were pre-existing before all those recommendations were thrown out the window. I remember making some posts, and a couple friends said, like, it sounds like you're against the government. Like, really, like, this kind of accusational vibe of, well, it's like, it sounds like you're a sinner.
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds like you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, shame.
This
shame,
like
shame.
You are questioning our doctrines. You're questioning the trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anytime a government starts filling this role, I get very, very skeptical of.
Yeah, well, it's an uneasy kind of thing. It's Peter Boghossian's substitution hypothesis, right? You know, in the absence of a religion, you know, something else will come in to fill the void. And, you know, if it was, you know, if we were having this podcast in 2011 or 2012, maybe we would be talking about how stupid vegans are, because, you know,
sometimes we still talk about that.
That's true. It's never a bad time to talk about how stupid vegans are. But, you know, every other restaurant that was popping up was a vegan restaurant, because if you were, you know, you had to identify as that. Otherwise, you were like, how can you justify eating meat? And then if it was, you know, 2015, 2016, you know, when a lot of maybe 2014 to 2016, when a lot of debate was raging in the U.S. about changing. Is it 2015? No, maybe it was a little earlier than this. You know, when there was even Obama was on record as being like, you know, not sure about like what gay marriage was going to look like, you know, like the transition from civil unions to
from a definitional standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, then it was that discussion. And so, like, you know, it sort of, it changes with the eras, you know, with the cultural zeitgeist as it shifts through the years. And, you know, COVID was a perfect example. Like, the trusting the science was, you know, if you went against, you know, Father Fauci, you know, you needed to go to confession, and you needed to, you know, you needed to take the Eucharist, which was, of course, your booster shots. And so, like, yeah, I mean, this is, it's a one-to-one it's not even a stretch. Like, none of this is hyperbole. It's, if you don't, and it affected obviously even religious people, I'm sure, but the types of behaviors and the types of actions that a government with a tendency towards authoritarianism evokes in people is one of a religious fervor in nature.
But right now, that's not apparent to the people who are in it. Because
they don't see it as that now, because they're oftentimes very vocally, atheist or whatever, right?
Well, but like, how is it that we're trying to wrap our minds around, like, what's the doctrines, or what's the messaging? What do people on the left believe right now? And I keep on hearing the message where right now people believe that the USA is a fascist state.
Yeah.
That the next Hitler is in power. That there are actual Nazis.
Yeah.
And Elon's a Nazi.
Yeah.
Despite them passing laws on anti-Semitism, expanding hate speech, etc. And both going to Israel and supporting Israel's right to exist, and these things that no good Nazi would do. So,
you see, the term has just been. I was reading something about this earlier. It's like I think it was like a green text thing too, actually, about how like the World War II. I mean, this is another discussion, but the post World War II consensus. Like, that is the West's religion, and it has all of the features of a religion. Like, you have your Satan figure in Hitler, and you can't, it's completely irredeemable. You can't, like, that's the worst evil there ever was. You have, the sin, which is being a Nazi, and then you have, the West, which is your, Churchill and the Allies, which are your savior figures, and you have these sort of sacred cows and these sort of like untouchable subjects because it acts and it behaves and it moves through a society as a religion would.
Yeah, and we see this pop up time and time again, and this is dominating their thinking. And as long as you can point to somebody and put enough media force behind it, you can get these ideas to propagate. And my larger point with this is the contrast between them calling the United States fascist right now doesn't align with what has actually happened through COVID. They let things go. They do not criticize things that would actually fit the definition of a top-down government overreach and authoritarianism. They don't criticize COVID because, well, it's for the greater good, which factors into some of this foundational myth of there's a clear and present danger. This evil is there, and we must do everything to get rid of this evil, even if it comes at the cost of like some human rights. And that same logic gets us. Well, how many wars has the United States how many countries has the U.S. bombed for that very reason? Well, they have weapons of mass destruction. Well, Saddam's the next Hitler, or
Gaddafi's going to go genocidal.
Yeah, and every time the threat is, all you need to do is you just need to connect it with this foundational pillar. Say this threat is the next threat of this degree. It's the same degree. It's the same. Like we got to save the world by doing this. And then as soon as you connect it with those emotions, people will follow through, and you can sidestep rights. You can enhance surveillance. You can say, well, we need to do this because, if we don't increase screenings, terrorists will come. And sure, we have increased screening, and then they just let people across the border. So like, what's all this airport screen? Like, they're just going to drive. They're going to get a pickup truck. Like, why fly? Like, airports are not a convenient place to shuttle a bunch of people with weapons over. So like, yeah, why is our security so strict there and then our borders are not as strict? So these things do not make sense, but they make more sense when you think about like what is beneficial to governments who want to increase their power.
I think that's a perfect. I think that's a perfect little bow to just wrap that up with, because that's. Oof! I couldn't have put it any better. Yeah, it's. As we always do, James. We start very specific about the mayor of Edmonton running for a federal MP, a federal seat as an MP, and we end up in geopolitical immigration theory and COVID inevitably, but I love it, man. But that shows that we are practicing what we preach, and we are thinking from a principled standpoint about specific issues rather than trying to be hyper specific in the grand scheme of things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's if we're able to relate it back to like, well, here's the larger dynamics in play, then that's more than just like sensational. Like, guess what this person did?
Yeah.
So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's hopefully you are all finding this very useful. Hope to see some of you in the comments as well. We've had some interesting discussions. For any liberals in the comments, we'll see you there as well.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Even if we didn't want you to, you will be there, but we do actually want you there. So don't think otherwise.
I do. Thanks for everybody sticking around with two white supremacists. Yeah. After our immigration, we were talking about immigration. Somebody's like, "We're white supremacists." I'm like, really?
Yikes! I better tell my Lebanese father that. But anyway, yeah, that's about all she wrote, I think, guys. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again as always for me too. Make sure to, of course, we're on. You're probably watching this on YouTube. We're on X. We have the links below. We're on Rumble. We're on Spotify. We'll have the full episode on Spotify. And yeah, thanks as always, guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Cheers. Till the next one.